Shattered Pieces by Orpheus Kidwell, Chapter 2. The group of five finally found themselves in Sonna's village after 2 hours of travel. Uncle had been grumbling and fidgeting the entire time, restless and wanting to attack something. More than a few times she had to be restrained from attacking Gurren as a reaction to comments by the colder woman. She was the happiest that they had finally arrived, for sure. Sonnes itself was large enough for 30 or 40 families to live in, so it could hardly be called a village. Most of the commercial buildings were set up on the main road through it, though there was some side roads that led to other businesses and residences. If Naruto had to guess, he'd say that there were 50 or 60 buildings within the large, though crumbling due to several years of disrepair, walls of Sonnes. They had entered through one of the very large holes in said wall that was evidence of the Grim attack that originally destroyed the settlement. Speaking of Grim, blood bugs! Isarabi warned the team as she pointed to a small swarm of mosquito-looking Grim that were quickly approaching their group. Each one was roughly the size of a large dog and mostly made of the white exoskeleton so common amongst the insectoid Grim. Their masks extended into a large and dangerous proboscis that it used to drink the blood of its victims. Naruto activated one of his semblances, his eyes taking on a glassy appearance as he did so, to extend and sharpen his eyesight. 9. They all look like they're hatchings, so there's too not much to worry about. To his left, Anko was impatiently moving, nearly jumping in place as she looked at him. Fine, let Anko do it, I guess. Before he had even finished the word Anko, the girl was gone. Her weapon of choice was a pair of dust-coated daggers with blades about 10 inches in length and curved. Swiftly, she took one out. She took one of them with a cross slash that tore through even the exoskeleton, leaving it in two pieces that were turned to dust before they even hit the ground. This gained the attention of the others, and they all changed direction to attack her. This only seemed to make Uncle grin wider as she jumped above one that dove for her. Angling her body, she landed heavily on another of them and slashed off its fragile wings. Just before it hit the ground, she jumped off and forced it further into the ground with the motion. Flipping in the air, she thrust her right arm forward from her left sleeve. A large python jumped out and wrapped itself around one of the hatchlings, constricting the giant bug tightly enough to kill it. Uncle herself rolled into the ground before popping back up, already in a stance as she reached her feet. Six Grim eyed her a bit more warily, but she wasn't about to lose her chance at a battle this quickly. Uncle did something extremely stupid to any outside observer. She threw her blades at the Grim. With extreme precision, they struck in between the eyes of both of her targets, killing them instantly. The other four saw this as a chance and rushed forward just as Sora growled dangerous and sickly green. Her hands became coated in what appeared to be fire, but it was green instead of orange. "Let's go!" she shouted, with a wide grin spinning around one that tried to turn her into a shish kebab. As she spun, her right hand stuck it with the palm. Within an instant, the entire thing became coated in that sickly coated fire. It was at that moment that Yukimaru, who hardly ventured out of the compound if he were to be honest, learned that Grim could scream in pain. It wasn't quite a scream, more as erratic clicking that exponentially increased in pitch until suddenly dying off. What is that?" Yukimaru asked, never having seen Anko fight before. "Oh, that's Anko's semblance at work," Naito exclaimed to the slightly older boy. "It's called apothecary and allows her to poison things with her aura. In this case, she's using a fire spell with the dust infused in her clothes and her semblance at the same time. The result? A fire that spreads through your body and burns you from the inside out, forcing you to feel every bit of it because it doesn't kill off your nerve endings as quickly as normal fire would. On Grim, as they don't have blood, it's worse. Instead, it attacks each individual particle of light, the black dust that makes them up. By this point, the remaining three blood bugs had been taken care of, and Anko retrieved her blades, walking back to the group. Oh, that was fun. I hope there's more, though. Don't forget, Anko, there are several nests in the village, Gurren responded. You will have plenty of opportunity to play to your adrenaline addiction while we're here. Anko grinned wildly at that. That's great to hear. This only caused the older woman to sigh and shake her head. So, where's the hospital? Naruto took the opportunity to point to a building down the side street that the bugs had come from. It was tall, perhaps 6 stories high, with several broken windows and no lights. Atop the building, there were several greater Nevermore staring down at the village, while smaller Nevermore flew in the air around the building itself. The ground was sprawling with Beowulfs on the other hand. So the hospital is a nest?" she asked. It seems so, not to say it with a bit of worry. Beowulf and Nevermore, plus whatever we have to deal with inside the hospital itself. Okay, we need to stick together and not split up no matter what. All right? He looked at the other members of the team, who all nodded. I didn't know that we were dealing with a nest, but it should be okay if we only explore the first and second floors and come back later with reinforcements later. Aye, Captain, Uncle stated with a mock salute and a wide grin as she activated her apothecary semblance and became surrounded in that green aura. Gurren's own aura became purple as amethyst blades grew from her arms. Isarabi pulled out a spear that had several blue crystals embedded into it. At the ready, Yukimaru held a staff with a hook at the end of it, a strange mist exuding from his own aura as his eyes filled with a fire. Naruto clenched his fist as his aura shifted to a deep and burning red. Upon blinking, blue eyes shifted to crimson and rounded purple becoming slit. Let's have some fun, Kurama shouted as the quintet rushed forward, all else becoming meaningless to Kurama as he saw the enemies before him. The world may as well have been empathy, aside from the grim before him and himself, as a familiar feeling spread like a warm blood through his being. He could feel his adrenaline pumping as anger at these things filled him. They wanted to hurt Naruto as they had to, so they had to die. He would take great pleasure in ensuring that they paid for the capital sin of existing. As his thoughts turned dark, Kurama felt his nails hardening and sharpening, the only weapon he had ever needed. Rolling beneath a sloppy swipe from one of the surprised Beowulfs, Kurama racked his deadly claw across its midsection as electricity coursed through his aura, ensuring that it died painfully. He didn't even look back at the lupine-looking abomination and simply continued to the next obstruction. That's all they were. They were obstructions, not to him, to Naruto. These were things that dared to exist in opposition to Naruto, and for that, they had to die to cease existing. Kurama would accept nothing less. That's why he could do this. To take such ecstasy from what he did, he was ensuring Naruto's continued happiness for every new person he killed and took the semblance. For every grim he forced to revert into blight, he was making sure that Naruto could find happiness in life. Sparks danced over Kurama's entire body at this point, and he used the increased damage potential of the voltage to the best he could. Interestingly enough, it also seemed to allow him to push his muscles harder than usual. He noticed an increase in his speed and his strength as he used it. That would be something to inform Yami of. Tearing through three other wolves like a hot knife through butter, Kurama noted that he had somehow been both cut off from the rest of the group and surrounded by about a dozen of the beasts. He let out a low, guttural growl that seemed to cause the Grim to pause, even if only momentarily. So, you think you can box me in? I'll show you what happens to those who mess with me! With that, Kurama's aura turned into that dull brown from the shiny base as he stomped his feet into the ground. The dozen or so grim that thought to target him soon found spears made of stone from underground rushing forth to pierce them in several places at once. All any of them could do was for one of them all would do was for one of them to make a slight confusion whine before they all erupted into that black dust, leaving the spears, which were still connected to the ground, as the only evidence they'd ever been there. Kurama moved past them and towards the entrance of the hospital. The others were already gathered and waiting. Did Naruto say to stay together? Izarabi wondered with a slight smirk, causing Kurama to scowl. You don't have to tell me what I already know, fish brain. Not my fault that I have so many different auras that Grim are naturally attracted to me more than all of you. You act like you dislike having so many people to fight, Gurren noted, causing the frown to break into a near mad grin. I thought so. Shall we make our move then? Kurama took point with Gurren and Anko behind and to either side of him. Isarabi was to Anko's left, while Yukimaru took Gurren's right side, so they made their way in a narrow V formation. Immediately upon entering the lobby, the group was faced with the fact they were in a grim nest, as all semblance of furniture and technology that had once existed there was destroyed. On top of that, there were many corpses, some decomposed into only skeletal remains, while some still had flesh but weren't rotting yet. That spoke of just how recently they had been brought here. Kurama twisted his nose in disgust. Unfortunately, having the electricity move through his body also seemed to enhance his sensory organs, so he shut it off. Even doing that, the smell was harsh. It wasn't enough to make him nauseous. He had been around death for too often to feel sick at its sight or smell anymore. It was still annoying. What is this? Isarabi asked while Yukimaru couldn't even move when they looked upon the scene. Ah, that's right. They weren't in the lab for long before the Fang saved them. On top of that, the two of them hadn't been on many missions where they might see humans or faunus that would already be dead. Perhaps Naruto had been hasty in assembling them. While their semblances made them great for this type of scavenging mission, they were a tad inexperienced with death. Kurama felt something weird, but smiled even as he felt himself pulled back inside. This is what happens when the settlement loses to the grim, Naruto stated. His voice lacked its usual flair, his usual friendliness and excitement. It was cold. They're creatures so dark they can't even be called evil. The embodiment of all the negativity of the world rolled into a single being. They feed on the negativity, on our fear and anger and hatred, and are attracted to it like a thief to jewels. That's all they are, thieves. The boy who usually appeared carefree and jovial clenched his fist with a hateful grimace, twisting his lips. They're all monsters, monsters without souls. He then turned to the younger members behind in the back row. You can't let them win, no matter who they take. You can't give up. That's what we do. We don't give up, even after everything that has happened to us, even after what Orochimaru did to us. We didn't give up. Nissan and Nissan, they helped us out of that place with the help of the Fang. They do the same. They don't give up even with everyone stacked against them. We will win. To those who try and take what we hold as precious, there's only one option. They strode the turtle and fish faunus away from thoughts of the deceased as they nodded. You're right, Naruto. We can't let ourselves be stopped by the past. If you can move on, then I should be able to. I can't let someone younger than me be tougher, can I? Yukimaru asked with a smile. Isarabi sighed, breathing deeply. Yuki is right, Naruto. We're sorry. It's just surprised us is all. Naruto only smiled in response, his normal friendliness back in full force. Don't worry about it. It happens to all of us. Still, I don't like this. We should move faster and get out as soon as possible. No one had any objections to that suggestion, so they decided to get out of the lobby and into the hospital proper itself. Through a pair of double doors, they found a hallway of several rooms on either side, with a stairway and a pair of elevators at the end of it. Okay, time to stick together, and I'll go. Time to break that rule I made earlier. Uncle and Isarabi stick together, Guren and Yuki stick together, and I'll go alone. We'll check three at a time, and if you finish, don't move on to another room, but help one of the other groups finish the room. Then we move to the next set whenever we finish the first three rooms. Got it? I didn't know you had this leader thing already planned out, Naru. Uncle purred, trying to get a rise off the boy, but it didn't seem to work given the serious expression he sent her way. I'm in charge of everyone here. If anything happens to any of you, then it's on me. I thought a lot about this with Kurama Yami. He pointed out, if anyone encounters something they can't handle, don't be afraid to call for help. This is a nest after all. With that, they separated into their groups and began checking the rooms. Naruto found himself in what appeared to be a generic checkup room. He figured there would be a lot of these on the first floor. Despite it being something so basic, they were extremely low on supplies, so even something like this would help. Pillaging through just what was visible, he could find bandages and empty syringes, tongue depressors, and disinfectant. These basic supplies would be helpful. Even the glorified popsicle sticks, as Uncle called them, focusing on his aura, Naruto altered its structure and hue until it glowed a shining silver and activated a semblance he had come to call hammer space. Making physical contact with the supplies caused them to disappear, though each one didn't simply erase from existence. Rather, they were now contained within a pocket dimension of sorts that only he could access. He did recall that Hidomaru had once called it an inventory power. Just as with an inventory, unfortunately he had a limit to what he could carry. It seemed to be based on his own personal strength, so increased as he trained, which was certainly a blessing. Given how lightly the supplies he grabbed were, there was hardly any strain on him by placing them in. When it closed to full capacity, he'd known the more objects within it more pressure on his mind he could feel. The higher the weight of the collective objects, the more of a headache it gave him. It certainly was useful, but also split his concentration if used too much. With that in mind, he was sure he'd have quite a migraine by the time this was through. Luckily, he had a sort of loophole. Yami, can you take care of Hammer Space? He got no response, but even the slight pressure he felt disappeared as he had Yami put his full focus on the semblance. Apparently, the power required concentration to stay working, but it didn't care who was concentrating so long as they had some measure of connection to the aura that was fueling it. With that taken care of, Naruto continued to look through the cabinets until he came across a small Death Stalker in one of them. Without even waiting for it to attack him, he shifted the aura around his hand to take on his bioelectric semblance. He needed a name for it and created a bolt of electricity that struck the small Grim dead, dispersing it into dust. Deciding to be a bit more careful given Grim were taking residence even in these examining rooms, he left his own room to find that the other group were still searching. Given Yuki had some medical knowledge and would be able to instruct Gurin the best things they could bring, he decided that Uncle probably needed his help more. Entering the room her and Isarabi had entered, he found one nearly identical to where he had just left. There was just one gaping difference, and it was on the wall, or more accurately, there was no wall because it had been melted off. He could still see the acidic poison dripping from the hole that was large enough for a greater Nevermore to fly through. Uncle, this place is already in it's already in disrepair. Don't you think that tearing out a first floor structure might be a bad idea? Naruto wondered with a slight smile on his lips as he saw Isarabi wear a confident grin as if she had been explaining the same thing to her. Uncle puffed out her cheeks in anger. Shut up! I already know that. I can't help it that a swarm of blood bugs was in here feeding and tried to attack me all at once. Not all of us have so many semblances that they can use one precisely for every occasion. With fists firmly planted on her hips, Uncle leveled a glare at the blonde boy who simply shook his head. All right. Let's just get the supplies. Let me see. Doing a mental check of the choices, Naruto settled on a particular semblance as his aura became upright white, touching the wall, a part where there was some left, that is. He focused and the girls watched as the wall slowly grew and replaced the parts of it that were broken before it was completely fixed again. Turning to look at them, Uncle had her arms crossed and huffed. See, my point exactly. Jeez, your semblance is just too unfair. Naruto only smiled in response. Izarabi looked curiously, though. You want to ask me what that was, right? She nodded. Architecture blueprint. It was from one of the scientists at an Adlesian base in the outlands of Anima that we attacked. It lets me, how to put this, I can cause anything I touch to replicate itself on a path of my choice. It's handy for repairing things like walls and structures that are made of one substance. It's not creation though, as it absorbs the atoms in the surrounding area to create the structure. In that case, it took some mass from the rest of the building to repair it, so this side is slightly thinner than the other wall now, but only very slightly. The way Uncle talks, I thought you might have some sort of godlike powers. Isarabi muttered. No, Uncle is just envious. Gurin spoke up as she entered the room. Naruto still suffers the burdens and weaknesses of whatever semblance he takes, in addition to their gifts and strengths. Of course, he also must take the life of whoever he wishes to gain the semblance of given it's not so much copying their aura as taking it. Isarabi looked at the blonde who nodded. Every single semblance I use is from someone who was a threat to us or who willingly allowed me to have it due to the fact they were dying soon. There's a difference in you taking a life and I. If you take a life, their soul can pass to the next life. If I do it, my aura consumes their soul and grants me access to not only their semblance, but adds their aura to mine and gives me all their memories. It's useful to be sure, but also dangerous. Luckily, I have Kurama and Yami to help me each time. It's troubling to keep hold of who I am. Even memories of others like life keep popping up. Shaking his head, Naruto smiled. Enough of that, though. Let's just get what's in here and move on. We've got three floors to cover. After all, several dozen rooms and an increasing amount of grim later, the group found themselves finished with the third floor. While it was true to say they were uninjured, to say no one sustained any along the way wasn't. Any time it happened, though, Naruto would simply take on their pain and let his healing semblance fix any problem with himself. Still, after what they had scavenged, Yami was quite able to keep everything done on itself. I'm glad that it's finally done with. I don't think I could carry much more than this, he muttered before shaking his head. I think we should leave immediately then, Guri noted. And can't Kurama take on a a measure of the strain to alleviate you. Naruto shook his head before stopping and wearing a look that seemed to be pondering. You have something in mind? With that, Blue drowned under a crimson haze as Kurama took control once more. Oh, I'm no good with the hammer space, Kurama said with a shrug. Yami is the best at it, given all he ever does up there is concentrate and sifting through everyone's memories. Naruto, he's got lots of brain power to spare in concentrating on it since he's so smart and got all that medic training from Dr. Nohara. Me, I was literally made for one purpose, murder. He let a grin touch his lips, one full of madness. I do that well, but anything else isn't really my style, so I'm in control until we get back. I mean, I can still relay Naruto's messages to everyone, but other than that, Gurren nodded while the younger two seemed to be somewhat nervous at the prospect of Kurama being out for so long. It's not to say they were afraid of him turning on them, but rather they were terrified of how easily he killed. He was some sort of monster if ever there was one. With a new plan, they began making their way back to the stairwell when a high, insane cackling could be heard from the volume. It seemed to be coming from the direction below them. It sounds like someone else is here, Hisarabi commented as she pulled her spear out and did something to it, causing it to mechanically shift into some sort of sniper rifle aimed at the stairwell. Yukimaru frowned and activated his cobalt aura. A semi-translucent barrier appeared around the group with his semblance phalanx. Preparation seemed to be the right course of action as several hundred and more flexed through the corridor from the second floor stairway. Some ramped into the barrier and rebounded. Others continued past and into somewhere they could find, including killing themselves to break past the glass windows, allowing their peers to escape outside. There, scared, Anko wondered curiously before shivering what could cause so many Grimm to flee in fear. They learned shortly as a man appeared at the stairwell. He had slick black hair that was oiled back and pale skin, though most of it was covered. He wore a long-sleeved black coat lined with fur around the sleeves and collar and a pair of black pants with a black scythe with a tray of red blades instead of the usual one in his right hand. It also seemed to be a static weapon, one that didn't shift form. He let the murder of Nevermore pass and grinned madly upon noticing the group of White Fang members. Hello there. I am an acolyte of Joshin, come to spread his word to the unfaithful. Do you believe in our almighty savior and lord? Before anyone could make a sound or decision, Kurama stepped forward. No one knew what to expect, but it certainly wasn't what the boy did. Heretic! Heathen! Infidel, do not slander the title of the one true Lord and Savior with your blasphemous lies. Joshin is no being of light, he is no one savior, and you would do well to know your place. I am Kurama, paladin of the one true Lord, Uzumaki-sama. Everyone was silent. Everyone silent, including the man with the scythe, while they were in shock due to the ridiculousness of it all. For instance, the fact that Kurama was just called either himself or Yami or Naruto some sort of deity. The other man was shocked for a different reason. You dare to contaminate the air in my presence with that filth? Only Joshin can claim the title of holy above all holies. I shall take great satisfaction in ridding the world of the stain upon it that takes your form. Atone for your sin with the blood of your sacrifice. Kurama grinned, seemingly proud of his achievement. It shall be I that cleanses the world by ridding it of a false prophet of a false god, he shouted back, lightning coating his figure as he dashed forward faster than the younger members of his team could follow. Gurren and Anko made sure to pay attention, however. The other man attempted to swing his scythe for Kurama, but was surprised to find that he missed when the teen slid underneath the horizontal swing. Using his earth manipulation semblance, Mother's Embrace, he formed a platform to jump off and aimed a claw swipe for the man who could make Grim turn tail and run. He wasn't surprised nor disappointed when he was avoided. He was hoping for a good fight from this zealot. Settling into a stance, Kurama grinned wildly. Show the strength of your god in your blows, in your style, in this fight, and we shall test how strong our faith is, Kurama commanded. The other man mirrored his smirk, holding his scythe tightly before rushing forward, spinning around the next swipe. This one vertical and aimed the floor. Kurama used his momentum to swap at the man's jacket. He didn't reach flesh, but cotton was sprawled all over the floor, which warned the man of the difference in speed. The wild shock from the voltage attached to his opponent's body also warned him to avoid further damage as he jumped away from the fox furnace. What's your name, paladin? The man asked as he shed his coat, a look of respect on his face despite everything. I'm Hidan, head cleric of Joshin, god of death. Kurama grinned, liking this whole roleplay thing he had going on. I am Kurama, paladin of Uzumaki, god of life. The other members of the group sighed as they realized that Kurama had just turned Naruto into some sort of god for his own games. It seems our battle was inevitable, heathen. Kurama grinned as his electricity increased in intensity, causing his hands to glow dangerously, his claws lengthening as he forced the power into a shape. Death always overcomes life, so I shall win, heretic. Hidan declared as he rushed forward, weapon ready for another attack. Kurama grinned as the bioelectricity he was forcing to enhance his body allowed him to easily evade the attack. You cannot touch the bringer of life and absolute healer, Kurama replied just as passionately. The one who takes injuries from mortal men and faunus alike, allowing them to live, is not to be taken lightly. He can just as easily return those injuries as he sees fit. The lightning shell around Kurama's hand shifted to his leg, causing him to become a blur to even Hidan, Gurren, and Anko. It was no wonder that Hidan lost his weapon and found himself on his back, looking at the ceiling. Kurama appeared before him like some vengeful angel, grin making him look more like a demon. Crouching down next to the man, he simply allowed his index finger to touch Hidan's cheek. There were no marks, no stolen semblances was used. This was their original power. Burden. Immediately, Hidan screamed out loudly as his body was covered in bruises, deep gashes, third-degree burns, frostbite, and cancerous tumors all at once. Holding the tri-bladed scythe, Kurama used it to stand back up before sending it to hammer space. Behold the power of the god of life. Just as he taketh away, he giveth back, for he is a merciful god with a mercilessness and a sadistic paladin. Kurama's nearly mad laughter sent a chill down the spines of the younger members of the squad, who already feared him, and caused the older members to share a glance as they had lost track of whether this was all a game or what the boy believed. That's new. Even as it was said, Hidan's injury seemed to be healing at a rapid pace. The man slowly sat up, then got on his knees, then rose to his feet. I will not lose. The man rushed forward and grabbed a hold of Kurama's throat, attempting to strangle him, given he lost his blade. Kurama's response was to narrow his eyes and create a visible shell of blue electricity around his neck. Hidan convulsed before he was thrown away from his target, charred hands visibly healing even as everyone watched. No, I won't believe it. Joshin is the most ancient and powerful god. Hidan shouted at the top of his lungs as he stood back up and ran at Kurama, attempting to hit him across the face. Even without a semblance, Kurama sidestepped it, angling his foot to trip up the zealot. He fell face first, but didn't get up this time. Watching the man that they apparently couldn't kill, everyone heard him begin to sob. At first, it was quiet, but as it gained intensity, the other members looked at Kurama like he was some sort of bully. Seeing the pitiful wretch before them, even Kurama found himself feeling something new. Was it shame, guilt, pity, or Naruto forbid? He was enjoying this roleplay far too much. Sympathy. Sighing, Kurama turned off his semblance and crouched down before the man. The others watched as the grimace turned into a wide grin. There was no way this would end well for Naruto. Do you see the power of Uzumaki now? Kurama asked the man, who simply continued. There was even a small puddle of tears and mucus gathering on the floor from how much he was letting out. If you convert now, then I think he may find use in you. It seems you possess a skill in healing that he finds suitable enough to forgive you for your sins of worshipping another. On top of that, my skills lie in combat. I am his champion, but he lacks a true cleric in his ways. Hidan looked up, tears streaming down his face as he looked at the boy, hope filling his eyes. In fact, Kurama seemed to be having an internal conversation. The truth is, I allow Uzumaki to inhabit my body when he wishes to speak on Remnant. How would you like to learn from Uzumaki himself, train to become his cleric? The tears continued, but Hidan slowly rose to a sitting position. He would truly accept me and teach me? The members aside from Kurama watched in amazement as Kurama's strange game had somehow caused a fight and convinced the stranger to become the cleric for a 13-year-old kid. I think Kurama is insane, Isarabi muttered. It'll be amusing seeing how Naruto reacts to all of this, though. Anko responded with a grin as the near-insane psychopath and the mad zealot conversed. Oh, I just know Blake is going to somehow blame this on me, Gurren sighed. Don't worry, Gurren. We'll just convince Naruto to talk to her. She'll forgive you if we do that, Yukimaro responded. Gurren smiled until she realized that the boy had insinuated that it was her fault. Huffing in indignation, the girl crossed her arms. Everyone here was unreasonable, glancing back at Hidan, who was now conversing with the smiling Naruto, happy to play along and have a new friend. She couldn't help but smile a little. Still, it's not as if she disliked everything about them. They were a family after all, one big, happily and dysfunctional family. End of chapter 2.